Welcome to the Troubled Artists Podcast, Episode 32, Craig Dehut.
Welcome back to the Troubled Artists Podcast. Today I am here with Craig Dehut. Craig is a seasoned video producer, co-founded Appian Media in 2015 with Stuart Peck to create engaging, accurate, and free biblical content for young people. Appian Media stands out for its unique blend of professional production, biblical accuracy, and accessibility, earning awards, global supporters, and over 9 million YouTube views. Craig is passionate about making the Bible relevant and accessible, especially for homeschool families, faith-based audiences, and those interested in its history and geography. So Craig, thank you so much for being on the show. So before we begin, I do like to ask this one question. Tell us in your own words, who is Craig Dehut?
Craig Dehut is someone who enjoys art in a variety of forms, but is still learning. As a young person, I kind of dabbled in all of them. Like I liked to draw, I liked to write, I liked to act. Eventually, I got into cameras and video, and kind of found an avenue, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, where I get to kind of use a lot of those all in one profession. So still learning, still dabbling, and still enjoying the process.
So I guess that leads me to my first question, which is, how did you get into filmmaking in the first place? Was it something you discovered like early in life or later on in life? Just kind of tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I had been dabbling with a lot of different things. I, for many years, thought I would be a cartoonist. I loved the comic strip section in newspapers. Do you remember those newspapers? Yeah. And I drew comic strips and thought that would be my profession. And then, interestingly enough, someone gifted our family. I come from a fairly large family. I'm one of 7 children. But growing up, there were 6 of us before my parents adopted another. And we would just take this old camcorder that someone had gifted us and go out in the backyard and just make ridiculous things. Detective shows and superheroes, and zero budget, zero planning, no script. But we kind of learned, like, okay, none of us can drive, but how do we shoot a car chase? And none of us have, the budget to do this, but how do we make it look interesting? How do you make, once you cut it all together, how do you edit it together? This was before nonlinear editing. We weren't doing that on computers. I was using 2 VCRs. So somewhere in high school, I kind of went, this is so fascinating, and it's letting me do a lot of the things that I enjoy, writing and drawing, because there's storyboards in filmmaking. So writing and drawing and computers and photography, and I could do all of this together in one career. And so then I, after high school, chose to took a year of basic studies, and then went and graduated from a film school in Atlanta back in 2007. And I wish I could say my professional career path has been just incredibly straightforward and very clear as soon as I graduated, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. But I've worked in TV news, I've worked animating video games, I've done all kinds of things, and working at a coffee shop when those other opportunities didn't work out in between, and eventually have found myself in the last 10 years especially focusing on documentary filmmaking. And there are days where I just love it. It's just my favorite thing. There are days that are hard, and that's true for any artist, right? Some days we just don't enjoy the work. It's not fun. But I honestly couldn't imagine myself doing anything else at this stage. And it's ever changing too. I mean, I think about, there are some days I feel very old, and then there are some days where it's like, I haven't been doing this that long. But 20 years ago, I went to film school, and we shot on the Canon XL1, and it was the latest and greatest. You're still shooting on tape, but it was digital tape, and you'd have to transcode that. You'd have to get that digitized into the computer. Learning Final Cut. Avid was still around. It's still around. I'm not sure why, but we learned Avid, we learned Final Cut, we learned a little of Premiere. And now I think about 20 years now, now we're shooting on tiny little chips that can hold hundreds of gigabytes. The quality is massive. In a pinch, we're pulling out our cell phones and shooting video and like that was not anything any of us were ever discussing. It does, when I tell people about, I went to film school in 2005. 2005 was the year that YouTube launched. So there are people, generations younger than me that can't imagine a world where you shoot a video and I can post it and the whole world has the opportunity to see it in an instant. Well, 20 years ago, and that's all it was, 20 years ago, we weren't talking that way. We were talking like if you made a short film, if you could get lucky, it might end up in a film festival. And if you got really, really lucky, it might end up getting the eye of someone who would give you the opportunity to make that into a feature film. And if you got really, really lucky, maybe that feature film would get a theatrical release. But more than likely, you're never going to do all that. Now, people are making unbelievably high quality short film, long film, like long form stuff, and putting it on YouTube. And their audience, hundreds of thousands, millions of people can see it around the world. Things are changing. And I love that about this industry. Like you, that was actually my interest as well. I went to film school to be a writer and director. I wanted to write feature films and direct a feature film. And so you cut your teeth on short films. That's one of the pieces of advice that I give to people who are like, I want to do a feature film. It's like, great, that's awesome. Start with a short one first. And then make another short one and another short one, and then work your way up. But I know a lot of potential filmmakers who dive right into the feature film and it blows their mind how difficult that is, and it burns them out. And it's like, no, start small, hone the craft, get better. That first short film is going to be awful, but you've got to do it anyway. And that next one will be less awful, but it won't be good, but it'll be less awful. Keep at it, keep building. And, while I was in school, that was kind of my laser focus. In hindsight, I should have learned more of other parts of the industry because to date, I've never written and directed a feature film. I've done plenty of short films, but now, especially in the last 10 years, it's all principally feature length or series documentaries. And you never know. I guess that's maybe the moral of that long story is you never know where your path is going to go. Don't get so laser focused on one type of the craft that you don't learn the others, because it could, take you on a path that you weren't expecting, that you actually find out you enjoy more. It is an industry, especially filmmaking, that absolutely requires a lot of people. And especially when you're on set, like when you're actually in the production, there are a lot of people involved, and it's a lot going on. And our team, at Appian Media, we go on a production trip. In fact, we just came back about a month ago, an 18-day trip overseas. We were in Israel and Turkey and Greece. Took 6 to 8 months to plan it, and there were about 10 of us. It's a fairly decent size for a documentary, and I love that. It's some of my favorite time is when you're with a team and you're all working hard and everyone knows their job, and it's this well-oiled machine, and you're troubleshooting together and experiencing some great things together. But what a lot of people kind of forget about is now we're in the post-production of this. So we were over there creating the first half of a series about the book of Acts in the New Testament. And so Paul's missionary journeys, especially, like what took them from Jerusalem and then over to places in Turkey and Greece and eventually to Italy. This is going to be months and months and months of editing, which is my primary responsibility right now. And that's a very lonely task. It's not a team, at least in the initial days. It's me in this office by myself in front of a computer. And there are times as an artist where, at least if they're like me, you crave that. Like I get really creative and I can do some really good things. I just need some alone time. I have a wife. I've got 3 kids. I'm very blessed to work from home, and I love being so close to all of them. But there are times, like right now, there's a sign on the front of my office. In fact, it's a Hobbit reference. No admittance except on party business. And I put that on the front of my office so the kids know, Daddy's doing a podcast or Daddy's working hard, and don't just come bursting into the door. And there are times where you crave that alone time, but then there are other times where it's like, I need to get out and be with other people. I need to be with other creatives. I live in the Midwest. We live in central Indiana, and there are some times where it's like, I just want to hang out with another guy while he's flying a drone. Let's go fly drones together. I want to let's go shoot something. I'm not getting paid for it. It's not a client, but man, I just want to go and be with another artist and work together. Everyone should do that. I would highly recommend doing that. Artists who only ever work alone, like, we never have all of the best ideas. We feed off of each other. We get inspired by other artists. We get challenged, maybe. We get pushed. Some of the best things that I've ever produced usually come from someone going, yeah, but have you thought about it this way? Like, have you tried it this way? And so we can do that for each other, and I enjoy that. So for the next 6 or 8 months, that is this period that I'm in. This will be a fairly solitary kind of task. But finding those people that you can connect with and feed off of and encourage and challenge is what I would recommend for every artist.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to get into Appian Media, and I want to talk about that. Like, how did that kind of start? And just like, yeah, I mean, I know you just mentioned like what you're currently working on, but just how did that whole production company kind of just come about?
Yeah, it came about by doing exactly what I just encouraged. Was there's another artist here in this area. His name is Stuart Peck, and we met each other about a decade ago. And at first it was just, hey, I do video, he works in video. We should hang out and have coffee. You know, there aren't very many of us in this particular industry, and certainly having another person who works in this industry who also has a Christian faith, there are even fewer of us. So it's like, yeah, let's hang out and have coffee. And we both kind of recognized this gap that we were seeing, this lack of high quality, like high production value and biblically accurate, historically accurate documentaries about the Bible, specifically that could be used like when you're teaching. So for young people, for high school classes, it's kind of where Stu first acknowledged it. But the fact is, anyone, when they're learning something that's unfamiliar, especially history, it's really helpful to see the place. It's really helpful to actually have a visual of what that place looks like and to understand the culture. And we were just looking like, surely someone's done this already. Something that we don't have to pay for. Like, it should be on YouTube, and it's well made. Like, there are plenty of people who have traveled over to Israel and have shot documentaries, and they're just kind of hard to watch because it's a dude who's in front of a camera. The camera's on a tripod. Jerusalem's way off in the background, and he lectures for 20 minutes. Like, you know, that's not what we were looking for. We were looking for something that you would find quality-wise on like a Travel Channel or on a Discovery. Like, they go into the city, they talk to the locals, they eat the food, they experience the culture, and they tie it to biblically accurate and historically accurate content. And so it was Stuart, actually, who went, I can't find it. What if we made it? How hard could it possibly be? If only we actually knew the answer to that question, we probably would have convinced ourselves not to do this. But it's hard. It is hard, and there's a reason why many people hadn't done it before us. But that kicked off. We actually, in the spring, so the idea was born the end of 2015. And in the spring of 2016, we launched a Kickstarter campaign because that's an expertise that I had, some experience that I had with other crowdfunding campaigns. And I said, I think we could raise the money that we need because we want to make it free. So we weren't going to sell the product afterwards. We needed to raise the money on the front end. And we were very thankful to have raised about $65,000 on a Kickstarter campaign, which is not enough. It's not. In hindsight, it wasn't. But it was enough for us to take a trip to Israel for a couple of weeks and produce the first 5 episodes of a series that we call Following the Messiah. To tell the story of the life of Jesus. So visiting places like Bethlehem and the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee and Jerusalem and Nazareth and Capernaum. And we launched it and about 200 people helped us raise about $65,000. And it was a 5-episode series, but it was only the first 5 episodes of what is supposed to be a 10-episode series. But it's like we can't do all 10 right now. We're only going to do 5, and hopefully people like what they see, and they'll help us raise the funds for the other 5. And that's exactly what happened. We were incredibly blessed. We took a trip in June to Israel. We released those first 5 episodes in January of the following year. So about a 6 or 7 month turnaround. And then we raised another $80,000 and took another trip to Israel and finished that series. It's about 4 hours worth of content, taking people through as many of those locations as we could go to. And it has remained our most watched piece of content at this point on YouTube, somewhere between 6 and 7 million views on those episodes. And that has then allowed us, we became a non-for-profit. People can continue to donate to us. And we've been blessed to we took another trip to Israel and did a series on King Saul and David and Solomon. We took a trip to Turkey and did a series on the 7 churches of Revelation, tackling the really easy stuff. We took a trip to Egypt and Jordan and did a series on the Exodus. So trying to pick one of the potential routes of how the Israelites came out of Egypt and into, to Mount Sinai and into the land of Canaan. And then, like I said, our team has just returned from a trip, which will take 2 trips. This first trip was 3 different countries for 18 days to tell the story of the book of Acts. And all along, it's continuing to raise those funds, because one of the things that's at the heart of what we do is we want it to be freely available. We want this to be, and not skimp on the quality. It needs to be high quality. It needs to be something that people can trust. Biblically, it's accurate. Historically, it's accurate. But we don't want people to go, oh, I can see why this is free. Like, yeah, you can tell. No, we want people to go, wow, I can't believe that this is freely available. And we've been going now for about 10 years. Last year, Stuart did make the decision to step away. As many artists do, pursue some other things. And so I'm kind of carrying the torch with a small group of board members and contractor workers to continue the work. And we're excited about what else we can produce. There's so much more to do. I know that some people, when they hear the story of Appian Media, or they look at what we've done, they get the impression, because it's mostly what we post online, these mountaintop experiences, oh, that must be amazing to do all of that. And it is. I don't want to downplay that at all. We're very blessed to be able to do things like that. But it is not easy. And for every mountaintop experience, there's 6 months of just agonizing planning and development that needs to go into these types of things, bumps in the road, as you called them. And you've got to be prepared for that. And you've got to have a motivation or a mission behind what you're doing that will get you through those bumps. Because for the artists who are doing things and it's just for the love of it and the fun of it, well, eventually they're going to encounter, and it's probably not going to take long, encounter a moment where it's not fun anymore. It's not enjoyable, at least in the moment. And you've got to have something motivating you that's deeper than that to push you through those times. And so this goes back to something you said earlier, as far as film and media has the power to change people, like to instill things in them, to stir their emotions and get their minds churning on things. And sometimes the audience doesn't even realize that that's what's happening. Like a good storyteller will get them wrapped up in something and get them feeling things. And the audience may not even be able to put their finger on why they're feeling that way, or put their finger on, why their brain has shifted to think of something in a new light, perhaps. There's power in this medium. And we need to be careful as filmmakers how we wield this power. Anyone who's worked in this industry very long can tell you it can be used to harm audiences if we're not careful. We can get people to shift their mindset about things, or even just kind of, I think of the endless scrolling of social media. Like, we can damage brains with the medium if we're not careful. Our motivation behind what we do with Appian Media is we want to communicate deeper truths about Scripture and about morality and about God that go beyond just, I'm merely trying to entertain you for a few minutes. No, we're trying to give you something that's of eternal value. And that's the motivation during those difficult times where it's like, why are we still doing this? Our film permit got rejected for the 4th time, and how are we going to film this thing? Even on the day, there were some locations. We arrived at our location in Greece and found out that our film permit was not actually going to allow us to get where we needed to go. And the whole day kind of gets upset. And it's like, well, we could either throw up our hands because it's no longer fun anymore, or we could take a moment, remind ourselves why we're doing this thing, remind ourselves the purpose, and it's greater than ourselves, it's greater than this moment, and let's push through that. I would encourage every artist to first discover their why behind the art that they're wanting to create, and make sure it's a valuable motivation. Artists who are like, I'm going to do art just because I want to earn a lot of money. Well, you're going to be disenfranchised very early on. That is not going to be the motivation, because even with our stuff, we put out a good product. I feel very confident and very satisfied with what we put out in the first few years. We were actually a little bit late to put it on YouTube at first. And the first 2 years that we put our stuff on YouTube, like, we were getting 20 views, 60 views. Like, it was nothing. We were earning like $6 of ad revenue a month. I mean, it wasn't for the money. And over time, we kept making more. The quality kept getting better. And eventually, it started to pick up steam. If we had only been doing it for the money, we would have thrown our hands up after 18 months and went, well, this obviously isn't worth it. But we're motivated by different things, and we're motivated by something, I think, more than just the dollars, more than the prestige, more than the awards. And if artists can remember that, find their why, keep motivated by that, make sure it's a sincere motivation, something genuine, something valuable. You're trying to contribute to your audience. You're trying to make them better after having consumed your media than they were when they first started. Then I think that'll push you through the bumpy times.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so much great information that you just said. Are there any like highlights or also challenges that you face so far in your career at Appian Media?
Yeah, no doubt. Every time we have to raise funds, I am very aware that the cost of something like this is high. We're not going out there and spending Netflix budgets or Hollywood's budgets, but to kind of break it down, to do something like what we just came back from doing, the pre-production, the actual production cost, an international documentary production with 10 team members in 3 countries and 8 different flights, and the amount of post-production, you're talking about $250,000. So about a budget of $250,000. Keeping in mind that that's producing hours worth of content. That's the cost of writing and printing books. It covers everything. Pennies when you think about what Hollywood would spend on that, but it's a lot. And I understand every time we reach out to donors and make that request that we're asking a lot. And we don't want anyone to ever get the idea that just because we have been successful over the last 10 years to raise the funds that we need, it is excruciatingly difficult every time. I find that very faith building. The money is not simply handed to us. It is not just super easy. And of course, you guys have success in the past, and so obviously you're going to get it every time. I have talked to people who think that way, and it's like, let me set the record straight. It's a lot of preparation and a lot of prayer and a lot of faith. And there have been times where we have had plans, we have wanted to take trips or start a new project, and the funding simply wasn't there. And we take that as an indication that God wants us to work on something else. God wants us to wait. There's reasons why we need to wait and hold off on that. There are times where we planned to release something and like stuff happens. The role of a producer and a director, if you were to boil those positions down, they are problem solvers, which is to imply creating a film or creating a media project of any kind is full of problems. And when you start encountering problems, don't think, oh, what's happening? This is so unusual. No, that is the nature of the beast. And a good producer and a good director are going to be those that know how to solve those problems. And so the problems that we have encountered, I mean, vehicles breaking down in the hills of Jordan, transmissions exploding and brakes giving out, camera lenses being dropped, film permits not going through, military asking us, telling us to move on, footage getting lost, hard drives going out. There's numerous challenges. Talent not showing up. We're supposed to interview, I remember this, bless his heart, but a man who basically owned camels out in the Wadi Rum in Jordan. And they don't operate like we do as Americans, where it's like, hey, meet us at 7:00 and we will do this interview. It was like, meet us at around sundown. Well, 2 hours of waiting and 2 hours of waiting. And the sun's going down and we're losing our light and no one's showing up and we're waiting for the truck and things happen. And learning to be patient, learning to trust God with that, learning to trust your team. So having a team that you can count on when things go sideways. Having people in leadership, and this is something I'm working on because I'm oftentimes in a role of leadership, keeping a cool head and learning to be flexible. And, there was a location we filmed at. Where were we? We were in Kavala. There's a location like 5 minutes from our hotel, super convenient, this ancient city that we could go and film at, one of these cities that Paul would have visited on his journeys, 3 minutes from the airport. So every 5 minutes, a plane is taking off or a plane is landing, and sound, you can't record a scene. There's no amount of pre-production. I guess I should have checked to see the location of the international airport near. Well, that messed up the whole thing. So we would film for 3 minutes and then the audio guy would say, wait, and we'd wait for the plane. Still rolling. Okay, keep going. We do 3 more minutes. Wait. That just drug out the whole scene, and you've got to work around that. And then we have to go, okay, we were going to shoot another scene here, but that's going to have to wait until we're at a different location somewhere farther out of town. Being flexible, and working through those things and having the right people around you that will help offer good suggestions, that will be just as flexible. And then, in our case, it's putting our trust in God. If this is something that he wants us to be doing, he'll make a way. And sometimes, man, he has waited until the last possible moment where we think, we need to raise $50,000 more by midnight tonight. Otherwise, we can't purchase tickets, and this trip is going to have to wait until next spring. And I'm not kidding you. Raising $53,000 in the next several hours from a donor who had never given before, who happened to be told by someone and suddenly the money is there, is just incredible. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes things do need to get delayed. But sometimes God waits for you, I think, to have your feet right up there in the Red Sea with the Egyptians coming up behind you before he says, stand still and watch, and he parts the Red Sea and makes a way. And so making sure that what you're trying to produce is something worthwhile, something with noble intentions, something that's supposed to better your audience. And I think that God will commend that and make a way if that's something that he wants to see happen. I turned 40 a bit ago and starting to feel a little old. I've got 3 kids, like I mentioned, at home, and when I think about what it meant for me when I was in high school, or especially when I was in film school, to have someone that I viewed in the industry see my work and commend it, like, super important, so valuable. I remember this guy. He probably does not realize how much of an impact it had on me, but just he was making some incredible short films, had a very impressive acting career there in the Atlanta area, and agreed to meet me for coffee. And I'm some punk, like, film school student, I've got nothing impressive to show him. But he wanted to know about it, and he wanted to share some of his ideas with me. And so I'm trying to be that for others now. I recently had someone who is currently studying media production in college right now. They're a sophomore, and he emailed me and just wanted to pick my brain for a little while. There's a part of me that's like, I'm sorry, you want to talk to me? Like, why? I'll share with you whatever's up here, and maybe you'll find a nugget or two. But I want to say yes to those types of things as often as I can, because it was so impactful for me that I want to turn around and do that. So when my kids, my oldest is 11, our youngest is 7, they can make stop motion animation on the iPad now, which again is just kind of mind blowing. To do stop motion when I was a kid was glorious. It was so difficult, and now there's an app for it and you can do it. But they make it, and I want to watch it, and I want to tell them what I love about it, and I want to commend them and encourage them and let them do that as often as I can. It's so important that when we are the recipients of it, but it's also really important if we can be those that are giving that to others as well. Just get out there and create. Start small. Find something and create and learn from it. Don't get discouraged when you finish it and go, oh, that's not everything I hoped and dreamed it would be. It probably isn't. I still feel that way every time I put something out, but do it again. Learn from it. Keep iterating, challenge yourself. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that artists can make is they wait until they feel like it's perfect before they release it, or even before they start on it. And that's a mistake. Put your heart and soul into it. Make it as good as you can. But if you're writing a script, don't write version 17 because you're just waiting for it to be perfect before you ever shoot a frame. That's a mistake. Like, go out there and create. Don't wait for the client to pay you for it. Find something. I'm not a huge fan of encouraging artists to work for free, but there are some times where it's like, look, you've got that creative itch and you've got to satisfy that. Find somebody, pick somebody, and you want to tell their story, and go out and, like, look, I'm going to make a 90-second video about you and your incredible story. And I'm just going to do it for the sake of creating art. Get out there and create it, iterate, learn from it, try again, wash, rinse, repeat. And before you know it, you'll kind of look back and go, oh, wow, like, I've been able to do some great stuff. Some of it's not my favorite. Some of it I could do better if I were given another opportunity. But that artist is going to be far more satisfied than the artist who sat around for years and years and waited for something to be perfect, or waited for the ideal opportunity to come to them. Instead, just go out and create your own opportunity.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.